What is up, everybody? This is JP, and today I'm coming at you with a video on how to build your own program. Again, if you want to get stronger, gain muscle, if you're doing a sport right now and you want to make a program based off of that, I'm going to give you kind of like the outline principles on how to make your own program and for it to fit on whatever your goals are. Again, building your own program can be a little bit complicated if you don't know what to do. If it's not complicated for you, you either A, don't know how to do it, or B, you're already in the fitness industry yourself, and that's why it's not too complicated for you. But it's a lot more than just picking a few exercises and going to the gym and doing them. But to start out, again, it all starts with whatever goals you have. So if your goal is to get stronger, if your goal is to gain muscle, if your goal is to lose weight, like have a better body composition, if your goal is to increase your cardiovascular health, if your goal is muscular or cardiovascular endurance, if you specifically want to train for a sport, you need to pick whatever you're working out for. It might sound a little bit like obvious, but a lot of people, they gain muscle, but they're going to the gym and they're doing those things wrong. Again, I can't go over each of these different individual goals, but I do have a few videos on some of these on my page. You can go check them out right now. I know I have one on hypertrophy and strength, and I think I have one on power. But again, these differ in time between sets. These differ in how much weight you use, how many reps you do. These differ in the intensity that you give it. Like by intensity, I don't mean weight. Yes, intensity with percentage of your 1 rep max, but these also differ in how strenuous you want to make your body, like how hard you want to go throughout the whole workout and how fatigued you want to get. Again, these differ in how long the overall workout is. So again, it's all dependent on what you need to do. If you have questions that you can't figure out in one of my videos, please post them down below. I will help you out. But again, all those things can differ a little bit, but you need to train for what you want to do. So again, you can write that down, but ask yourself, if I'm trying to gain muscle, am I using the training parameters for hypertrophy? Do I have compound movements? Do I have moderate volume? Am I working out pretty hard? And am I fatiguing myself when I work out, like my muscular system? Are my workouts easy? Am I hitting the body parts pretty good that I want to gain muscle in? Things like that. You need to ask yourself, am I having shorter than normal rest periods, like versus strength? Do I even know what my rest periods in between sets are? That's the thing. If you don't know those questions, again, you could go on my page. I go really in depth on how to talking about hypertrophy and talking about strength and what you need to do for those. But again, make sure you are training in what you need to do and what your goal is. Again, for like a sport, if you're trying to train for a sport and you're doing, let's just say, football, but you're doing a lot of running, a long distance cardio. Again, that's not something that you should really, you only have so much time, and there's a lot of different, more beneficial activities you can do besides the long distance running if you're doing football. Now, on the opposite end, if you're doing soccer or cross country, and I'm not saying weightlifting isn't good for those exercises. Weightlifting is good, but if you're doing excessive amounts of weightlifting and, powerlifting type activities, and you're not really doing too much long distance cardio, that's probably going to hinder you in some aspect, and your performance isn't going to be as good in those sports because those sports require a lot of cardiovascular and muscular endurance. So again, train for whatever your goal you're going to do. Ask yourself, what is your goal? If you even have a goal, or are you just going to the gym? And even if you do have a goal, are you really fine-tuning the aspects for that goal? Now, on to the main points that I want to get at, and these key points go over all of these that you need to think about. They go over every training parameter, power, strength, whatever it is. Okay, the first is do not do too much and do not do too little. I know that's very vague, but if you're working out too much or you're not working out enough, it's going to hinder you. Now, to give you some exact numbers, if you are just a regular exerciser, you like going to the gym, and I'm not saying you're not a hard exerciser, but let's just say you're not doing a sport, you just exercise for, like I said, you want to gain muscle, or you want to, run faster, or you have personal goals. I would personally, you should not be in the gym, or at least the main bulk of your workout should not be longer than an hour. That's just my opinion. Now, if you're in the gym and you get out and it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours later, but you did stretching too, you did your warm-up, and that was walking in the gym, walking out the gym, that includes your cool down, but the main bulk, like your working sets were only like an hour, then that's okay. But again, If your working sets are longer than an hour, if you're doing compound movements for 2 hours straight, that is too much. So I would say an hour is a good factor. So if you have to time yourself, you know, from the second you start your working sets, hit your timer, and then stop your timer whenever you're done doing your working sets. If it's like 15 minutes, that's great. If it's 40 minutes, that's great. If it's like an hour and 2 minutes, that's still not that bad. But if you're like, oh, hour and 37 minutes later, you're still doing squats or overhead press, that's too much. You're either you're messing something up along the way, or you're doing everything right, but you're just doing too much. Now, too little, if you're going in the gym and you're only doing like 7 sets, 6 sets, if you're in the gym for 15 minutes, and I mean 15 minutes like weightlifting, and I'm not saying you can't do a hard workout in 15 minutes. There's going to be someone watching this video who's going to be like, well, what if I do supersets and a bunch of drop sets and I'm just doing arms? Of course, then you could probably do a 15-minute workout. But I'm talking about like, if your leg day or chest and back day is 12 minutes or something, that is not enough. And even if it is an hour long, if you're only doing like 10 sets, 5 sets, 6 sets, 8 sets, that's not enough. That is beyond, that's just not enough to do. Especially for hypertrophy, where in my opinion, you have to have around moderate volume. If you're going pretty hard, you should have at least moderate volume. If your volume is too low, especially for hypertrophy, it's going to be a lot harder for you to gain muscle. So again, you got to make sure you're not doing too much, not doing too little. So make sure you try not to go over an hour for your main core workout, your working sets. And for too little, I mean, depending on what you're trying to do, but I mean, again, you have to gauge that depending on your goal. If your core workout is 10 minutes, that's okay. Core, you can train in 10 minutes. But if your leg workout is 10, 15 minutes, that's not enough. If your back, you know, I would say about 30 minutes to an hour of some good training is enough for if you're training hard enough and you're training correctly. Okay, proper rest. Ask yourself this for building your program. Are you doing the same muscle group back to back? If you are, you're wrong. You should not be doing, like, for example, if you do legs one day, you should not be doing legs the next day. Now, if you're doing legs one day and then upper body the next day, you can train 2 days in a row as long as you're switching body parts. And even if you're doing that, you should have at least, I would say maybe at least 1 or 2 days throughout the week where you don't do anything at all. And also, too, again, you have to make sure you're not hitting the somewhat same muscle groups. It may not be the same, but it may get confusing. Like, for example, if you're doing deadlifts one day and you're doing squats the next day, they're different exercises, but for example, both squats and deadlifts take glutes. They both involve hip extensions, so that's something that you have to think about. So even if you're hitting the same muscle group, I would probably recommend that you change that up. So whatever muscle group you're doing, make sure you get at least I would say about 48 hours rest in between that same muscle group again, at least 40 hours. If you're doing it 24 hours is not enough. That means it's day-to-day and not enough. So, for example, if you're doing legs on Monday, wait at least till Wednesday to do legs again. Preferably, probably up Thursday. If you have 2 days where you don't do that same muscle group, that's even better. Right now, I'm doing I'll do upper body, rest day, lower body, rest day. Upper body, rest day, lower body. That's what I'm doing right now. So again, that's proper rest days in between each muscle group. And you have to remember, when you think about the rest too, think about, for example, if you're doing pull-ups one day, like chin-ups, that involves a lot of the biceps. And if the next day you're doing curls, again, that's biceps again. You may not correlate pull-ups to arms, but pull-ups do heavily recruit the biceps muscle group. Or same thing for bench. If you have a heavy bench and push-up day, and then the next day you're doing tricep extensions, that's not enough rest on your triceps. So make sure you think about it like that too. So remember, ask yourself these questions as I'm going along. Am I doing this? Write it down, tell yourself that you need to do that. The next one, hit every major muscle group. And this goes back to the beginning goals. Your goals, you might have more than one goal when you're making your program. At the beginning, you may have asked yourself, well, I'm training for strength and I'm training to gain muscle. So make sure you're hitting every muscle group. Generally, there's almost no instance where I would say that you can't ignore muscle group. Even if you're a person who says, well, I don't care about legs, I'm just trying to get a better bench. One, it's not going to benefit you as a human not to train legs, because we use our legs all the time. If your legs aren't, if you don't know how to properly squat, if you don't know how to properly deadlift, it's going to be a detriment to you in your overall life. 2, due to the anabolic response, and anabolic means kind of like, just think of anabolic as muscle growth. Due to the anabolic response that we get when we do a leg day, doing legs can benefit you in your bench press by promoting hypertrophy. If you have a bigger chest, you're going to have, I guess you could say, bigger muscle fibers, and you're going to be able to push more weight. So hit every major muscle group. Don't ignore legs. Don't ignore your rotator cuff. Maybe make a key list of points. Am I training shoulders? Am I training back? Am I training my rotator cuff? Am I training core? Am I training legs? Am I training, and calves, you don't need to train calves if you don't want to. Me, I like to, but again, the major muscle groups at least. So, for example, arms, you don't need to train arms if you don't want to. You really don't. If you're doing pull-ups and if you're doing bench press and push-ups and things like that, that's going to hit arms in and of itself. Again, you don't have to. If your goal is hypertrophy, yes, you may want to hit arms. That is probably something you're going to want to do. And some people just like the aesthetics for arms. You know, they want big arms. Then you got to train arms if you want big arms. But if you're someone who's like, I want to get overall mass, but I don't want to get too much into it. I don't want to be working out too long. I like keeping my workouts nice, short, and very intense. Then you don't need to train arms. If you're including pull-ups in your routine, that's a good way to get big arms. But again, for the major muscle groups, like I said, back, chest, legs, core, shoulders, things like that, glute, make sure you're doing squats, deadlifts, you need to hit them. I don't care what your goal is. So if you're asking yourself right now, well, I'm a cross-country runner. Yes, but cross-country runners can benefit from doing, for example, obviously power exercises will help a cross-country runner run faster overall. They've done studies on long-distance runners who do power and strength exercises. It helps them, it helps their performance in whatever run they're doing. And also, too, for someone who, like, for example, same thing, cross-country runner who does rotator cuff exercises and trains their rhomboids and their traps and their lats is going to be able to have better posture when they're running because their muscles aren't going to get as fatigued because they train them. And because of the better posture, they're going to, in an indirect way, they're going to help increase their run time. So, yes, and I don't care, like, for example, on another example, a power lifter. If you're a power lifter, you still shouldn't ignore core. I see so many people never train their core because they use that shitty excuse. Well, I'm training my core during my squats and stuff. Yes, but that's not enough. You can't ignore core. Yes, it's good. You can count that in a weird way, including compound exercises in your program, but it's going to help train your core a little bit, but it's not going to train you. It's not enough. So that, to me, it's on both aspects of the spectrum. If all you do is train your core and you never do the big compound movements, it's not enough. If all you do is big compound movements but you never train your core, that's not enough either. I see so many powerlifters, and nothing against powerlifters. I respect them indefinitely, and there are many powerlifters who train their core, and that's utmost respect to them. I mean, they train hard in and of themselves. But I see, and it tends to be more amateur lifters or people who like strength training. They tend to ignore their core because I don't know why. There's a stigma against it. Maybe they think they look stupid, but don't ignore that. And again, when I say train every major muscle group, you don't need to do power, strength, hypertrophy, endurance for all those muscle groups. I mean, if you're doing hypertrophy and you're getting all those muscle groups, that's fine. But just make sure, ask yourself if you're doing that. Okay, proper nutrition. That's the next one. Again, I don't want to, that's a very general term, and I'm not going to get into, okay, we all know you got to eat right, that's fine. But what I mean is, if your goal is hypertrophy and you're not taking in at least taking in as many calories as you're burning or a slight excess of calories of healthy foods, you're not going to gain muscle. For example, if you're cutting your calories too much or you're eating way too much food, you can either lose muscle or gain too much fat. And I'm pretty sure that if you're training for hypertrophy, your goal is to gain bigger muscles and to look more aesthetic. You want to look good. You can't look good if you gain a bunch of fat at the same time. So again, you got to eat for what you need to do. If your goal is body composition and you're not in a slight negative caloric balance, and you're not maybe doing high intensity cardio, which is going to help burn more calories throughout the day, again, you're not eating enough. Maybe you're eating too much to lose weight. You got to kind of figure out what's good for you. And for example, strength athletes, you may need to eat even a little bit more than a bodybuilder, because maybe you're a strength athlete. And I'm not saying don't be a fat strength athlete. If you don't want to, you can if you want. But if you're trying to balance aesthetics with strength and you're like cutting too many calories, that could be a detriment to your strength or power. So if you're a strength athlete, you might want to eat in a slight excess just to make sure you're getting the most out of your training. That's going to be a big detriment to someone who's trying to get stronger and you're not eating enough. Again, look at top level elite athletes. Again, I'm not promoting being big, but a lot of them have a little bit of excess fat on them because again, they're making sure that at no point are they catabolic. They're always growing. They're always eating You know, if you have periods of time where you're cutting too much, it's going to be hard to be extremely strong. Okay, now this is one that I see a lot of people don't do. You need to change your workout every 3 to 6 weeks. And by change your workout, I don't mean do the completely different workout. I'm not saying go from squats and weightlifting to completely ditching that and doing yoga or something, or long distance running. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if you're doing, let's just say you're doing weightlifting, and we're gonna take, for example, a back day. If you're doing chin-ups and then all you just keep doing chin-ups and all you do is maybe add weight to them, that's not enough. If you go from doing chin-ups to maybe doing like negatives, let's just say you're doing regular chin-ups and then you put some weight on and then you slow down the eccentric to maybe a 5-second eccentric or a 4-second eccentric, like a 4-second negative. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's enough of a change to elicit to keep growing, to keep getting stronger, to keep gaining muscle. Or for example, if you're doing just regular back squats and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna change it up. I'm gonna lighten the load and then I'm gonna do 21s with squats. And by 21s, I mean you do 7 reps of the bottom half range of motion, you do 7 reps of the top half range of motion, and then you do 7 reps full. So you basically change the range of motion and you change the time under tension. That is something that can still elicit growth in your body. It's gonna be a slightly new stress for your body. Again, you're still doing back squats. It's not a completely different change, but I would recommend at least modifying it somewhat every 3 to 6 weeks. Too many times I see people keep the exact same exercises and they do in my opinion, it's lazy. All they do is, well, I'm just gonna slap on 10 more pounds and then it's a little harder. That's not enough. It's still too similar. You might see a little bit of gains, but it's not gonna be as much as if you change it up a little bit more than that. Get a little bit creative with your workouts. Again, if you have a question, post it below. I'll help you out with that. So remember, change it up every 3 to 6 weeks. Proper periodization. And by that, and this goes back to the training goals again, make sure that if you have, a lot of people you're gonna watch this and you're probably one person who's gonna have multiple goals. You're like, well, I wanna get strong and I wanna gain muscle, or I wanna gain muscle, but I also wanna be good at running, or whatever it is. You got to make sure you're training these at the proper times and in the proper amounts. Again, for example, power exercises, absolute power exercises, like let's just say you're doing power cleans. They should come before cardio exercises. If you run 1.5 miles and then go do power cleans, 1, you're probably going to be really fatigued, and 2, that could be extremely dangerous. The fatigue in combination with the very highly technical exercise like power cleans can put you in a position where you hurt yourself. You mess up, you drop the weight, whatever it is. So making sure you do them in proper order, absolute power first, and then absolute strength, then hypertrophy, then endurance. Sports, again, involves all those, and so does body composition. So again, endurance is usually last, absolute power is usually first. And also too, with proper periodization, make sure you're on the days that you're training, you have a layout. When you're making your routine, maybe Monday will be a strength day, lower body strength. Then maybe Wednesday is lower body hypertrophy. Tuesday is upper body strength, and then Thursday is upper body hypertrophy. Or you can put them a day in between. Maybe you have Monday is upper body strength, Tuesday is lower body hypertrophy, Wednesday is an off day, Thursday is the reverse of the other two. So whatever I said the first time, you're doing lower body strength Thursday, and then you're doing upper body hypertrophy Friday. So think about it. You're getting proper rest periods in between each body part and day. You're making sure you're hitting strength and hypertrophy, and you're going to be able to grow doing it that way. So again, for example, doing it Monday upper body hypertrophy and then Tuesday upper body strength. 1, those are back-to-back days upper body, which is not good, and then 2, it's having those two so close together. It's not gonna help you properly grow. So make sure that you periodize those. So if you have maybe you have a layout of a day or something that you know, okay, well, I'm in a sport today, I'm going to work on sprint training, and then you just make sure you lay it out. If you want to just type in periodization on YouTube or look it up on Google, again, it'll help you more with that. Eventually, I'll probably make a whole video on that, but right now, just make sure you keep that in mind if you have a proper layout of what you're going to do, whatever weeks, what you're going to do over a long course of a cycle. Proper progression, that is the next one. And by progression this goes back to the changing it workout every 3 weeks. Make sure that you're increasing the difficulty over time. It's good to change it up, but you have to ask yourself, is this harder to me too? If you're just changing it and it's not any more difficult, if you're using the same weights, if you're not making something harder, if you're not going to a progressively more difficult exercise, you are not going to gain. You're not going to gain anything, but you're going to plateau. So make sure when you're progressing, you're making slight, not too much, slight increases in difficulty, increases in weight, and increases in complexity. Maybe you're at a low volume because you're just starting out, and maybe you just increase the volume a little bit. But make sure you're properly and intelligently increasing the difficulty of your workout. And this is the last one, and this is pretty important. Make sure you learn the technique of the exercises. If you ask yourself this right now, for squats, have you ever done any videos on squats? Do you have a personal trainer? Have you asked a very intelligent, not just anyone, an intelligent friend or someone that you know that has been in the game, the fitness game for a while, and they've done squats and they have a reputation for, and their squat looks clean or something. They don't have any low back pain, and even if they do, what if they just have a great squat? Make sure you learn the technique. If you haven't done any of the things that I just said, looked up a video, if you're not a personal trainer yourself, if you're just someone who goes to the gym and you've never gotten any help, trust me, you probably have no idea how to do a right squat. You're doing something wrong. And even if you are someone who knows what you're doing, and you're the people who are trainers or the smart people they'll understand me on this. Maybe sometimes it's just good to have someone check your form. Just be like, hey, can you check my form? Is my low back rounding? Or my knees buckling in? How far are my knees going forward? My feet are staying on the ground, right? Is the bar moving in a vertical path on my squat? Or is it moving forward and backward? Because that would be bad, again. So make sure you learn technique. Do some research you need to. Again, if you have a question, I'm here to help. But again, if you want to do the research on your own, go watch another video. Maybe look it up. Ask a friend. If you pay for a personal trainer. If you find a good trainer, trainers are, again, I'm a trainer. I understand. I see people who are smarter than me, more intelligent than me when it comes to working out. And it's good. You know, I look up to them. I learn a lot from them. So make sure you do proper technique. If you ignore that step and you just go into the gym and do your squats, one, you're going to be hurting your performance. Two, you could physically hurt yourself. And three, I mean, what's the point? What's the point of going to the gym? And going to the gym is becoming a better individual, increasing your health, getting stronger. You cannot get stronger. You cannot keep gaining muscle if you have crappy form. If you're, again, the squat, deadlift, and a bench press are more complex than you think they are. Shout out to Greg Nuckols. Greg Nuckols, he has a very, very long article on how to bench press. I read it. It was the best article that I've ever seen in my entire life. But the fact that he could write a 94-page article on bench press alone, and it was all great, useful information. So it's not like, for example, a bench press is not pushing a bar up and down. So if you don't do the research on your own, and if you're just one of those people who's going to ignore it, you're going to be hurting yourself. So again, make sure you have all these things tied into your program. Think about that. I know it's a lot to take in. If you want to, it might be a little bit boring, but you could rewatch the video. Again, take notes. It's good. But if you have any questions, anything that you want me to do a video on, please post it down below. Again, I appreciate your support. Please like, share, and subscribe. But until next time, peace.